My name is Dan Hudson. I have the privilege and honor of being NFFTY's executive director, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to our first ever live pitch competition with real money, real prizes, real stakes on the line. We are here in the midst of the National Youth Filmmaker Summit, which is another new endeavor for us, which is expanding our efforts to advance, connect talented youth worldwide. We're doing 5 full weeks of sessions around how to break into the industry, how to advance yourself in your artistic craft. Please check it out, nifty.org/summit-2021. You just saw a few of our upcoming events in the next couple weeks just now. For this particular session, before we get started, I want to do a visual description of myself for accessibility purposes. I am a white male in my 30s, bald on top with a closely kept beard, a patterned collared shirt, and a virtual background behind me, kind of doing a framing with your hands sort of gesture. And I want to give a shout out to some of our sponsors. And Teresa, I believe you might be on deck with a little something thrown out for some of our sponsors, in addition to the cash grants that we're going to be giving out to all of our awardees, and also some additional prizes to thank some of our pitching folks that are with us here today. We're going to have some additional in-kind support from some of our sponsors: Adobe, Final Draft, LaCie, Audio Socket, Film Supply, Music Bed. These are all things that are going to help stretch those dollars from the cash grants, and just some additional production and post-production support for these projects. Thank you, NFFTY sponsors. We'll announce more about the specifics about what those prizes are, and how much each film is receiving, and which film projects are awarded in a couple weeks. So please stay tuned on NFFTY's social media and newsletter, all that good stuff. Excited to share the winning projects very soon. But they can't win without pitching first. And so with that, I am going to turn things over to our MC for the evening, Ryan, here on the NFFTY team, who is going to introduce our judging panel and help kick us off.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks to everyone joining in today to check out these wonderful pitches. It was a really exciting opportunity to get through and comb through all of these submissions. We had over 60 different filmmakers submit pitches to this competition, and narrowing it down to just these 8 was incredibly difficult. So there is some real top tier quality on display tonight. So I think it's going to be a wonderful evening. I'll have everyone here, all our judges, introduce themselves. So, and for accessibility purposes, to announce myself as well, I have the similar background as Dan, with the hands framing the screen, and I have sort of a not well kept big red beard as opposed to Dan's close kept beard, and I have glasses, and I'm wearing a plaid shirt. So let's start off. Brian, you're the first one on my screen here. You can introduce yourself.
Ryan, I was not ready for that at all, but I'll gladly go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Kahn. I work with Full Spectrum Features, an organization based in Chicago that's dedicated to increasing representation in front and behind of the camera. And we do that by producing and distributing films by women, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and folks from the disability community. I identify as a Latino, South Asian, gay man. I am currently in a room. There's a door to my right or your left, a white wall behind me, and I'm wearing a blue dress shirt. And that's all I can come up with off the top of my head.
Karen, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Karen Coleman. I'm a film programmer, and I'm the founder of The Future of Film is Female. We're a nonprofit organization that amplifies the work of all women and non-binary filmmakers through a short film fund, exhibition, and community building programs. I am tired. I have brown hair, a little shoulder length gray, black shirt. This is written and directed by Barbara Loden, and I have a Fernando de Leo poster behind me.
It's a very cool shirt. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks.
Shauna, you can introduce yourself.
I am Shauna Swanson. I'm a supervising producer at ITVS, Independent Television Service. We fund independent documentary filmmakers. It's an open call process. It's a government funded organization. And we just have two initiatives. One is diversity development. So it's a development fund. And then we have a production fund that gives about up to $350,000 in production support. I am an African-American woman, pretty nondescript. I was going to say I'm 22, but I am not. I have gray hair at my temples here. And my background is a bookcase, just a messy bookcase that hasn't been dusted since the pandemic, if you can imagine that.
Yeah, I have my background here to hide all the things that haven't been dusted as well. Thomas, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Thomas, Tom. I tend to write my name out as Thomas, but you can call me Tom. I am founder and executive producer at the Film Fund. We fund independent filmmakers, short films. You write one sentence pitching your film for a chance to receive up to $10,000 and other prizes to make it. I created that initiative a few years ago when I was looking for funding for myself for a short film, and I just realized how difficult it really is and how grueling it could be with the whole grant process and submitting these long applications. So I wanted to create something that was a little easier to submit to. So that's how the Film Fund came about. I am sitting on a purple couch in my living room, and there's a print behind me that my friend made a few years ago. I am a Caucasian male wearing a pinkish hat with glasses on. I haven't shaved in a few days and I've had a really long day, but I'm excited to be here. I'm also a filmmaker, writer, director, producer, currently working on passion project right now in post-production. So thanks for having me and looking forward to getting into it.
I'm glad that even after a long day, you were all able to attend. So these, I know these pictures are going to be like a jolt of electricity, really rile up your evening. Opal, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Opal Hope Bennett, co-producer of POV and producer of POV Shorts. POV is the longest running documentary series on public television. We just launched our 34th season this past summer, and POV Shorts is in its 4th season. I am a African-American woman of caramel hue, wearing black glasses. I have a shortly cropped natural hair fro that's slightly red, hoop earrings, wearing the John Legend New York t-shirt. In the background is a big piece of furniture that's off-white in the middle and brown sides, and Spike Lee's 25th Hour poster leaning up on the floor. And the bottom half of my dry erase board.
Great. Yeah, great collection of shirts and posters with these judges. They bring so much expertise, but they also have a lot of cool things. Colleen, you can, last but not least, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Colleen O'Shea. I am the Exhibition and Outreach Manager at Women Make Movies. We are a nonprofit that supports women filmmakers through distribution and also through production assistance, primarily acting as a fiscal sponsor for films that are in production, along with a host of other support services. I am a white woman in my 30s. I have brown glasses on, brown hair in a low ponytail with black headphones and a blue button-up, and I have nothing interesting behind me, just a blank white wall. Excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you here. And I'm excited for this event to begin, so let's jump right into it. I'm going to bring up our first pitcher. Anjini Azar is here to present her film, Our Sin. So Anjini, you can take it away from here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Anjani, and I'm the writer and director of Our Sins. Our Sins is about a desperate son, Riz, who goes to extreme lengths working for a pharmaceutical drug dealer in order to save his diabetic mother, Rahila. It's a tragedy about being too poor to survive a disease that's not supposed to kill you in the first place. The seeds of the story have been planted over the course of years, so bear with me. When I was 15 years old, I learned that my childhood best friend that I hadn't heard from in some years died from diabetes. Fast forward to my early adulthood, I had gone over a year without an inhaler or an EpiPen because of the price tag, despite having life-threatening allergies and asthma myself. I realized a story needs to be told about a predator in the healthcare system, Big Pharma. But the real angle is how it's destroying families. It's about the people. A couple years ago, a 26-year-old type 1 diabetic named Alex Smith made national news. He was found dead, surrounded by empty vials of insulin he'd been rationing. 26 years old. Insurance is expensive, so he was uninsured, and his insulin and supplies cost around $1,300 per month, even though it costs $6 to make a single vial of insulin. Alec died 3 days before his payday because of a nasty for-profit system that preys on the disadvantaged and the sick. In fact, 50% of diabetics around the world can't afford insulin. Young people, Black and brown communities, lower income communities, the uninsured. And this birthed a new sector of the Black market that's now more profitable in some cases than narcotics, pharmaceutical drugs. Life works in mysterious ways because I one day came face to face with pharma drug dealers and witnessed this phenomenon with my own eyes. Please don't ask me how. This is when Our Sins was born, a story of the dark underbelly of Big Pharma that many don't know but need to. The film is the bold, visceral visuals of Sicario met with the heart-wrenching drama of a family stuck in a corrupt system like that in Blue Bayou. How much would you risk for the ones you love? To what lengths would you sin to make your time with them longer? Our protagonist, Riz, is pushed to the edge answering these questions when his mother's life is given an expiration date by the system, and his only place to go is a drug dealer like the ones I had met. An immigrant and uninsured, Rahila's struggle is the struggle of so many of us. But this film is special in another way. It's led by a group of diverse women, myself, my first AD Molly, and my producer Kiana. And we've recently partnered with the Beta Cell Foundation as well. All of us come from completely different backgrounds, but two things brought us together: our shared horror stories with the healthcare system and the realization that there's not a story about the real fall from grace of a family that suffers at the feet of Big Pharma. We are nothing but the stories that we tell. And the story of Our Sins is real, and it's all around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I am now going to pass it over to the judges for an opportunity for any comments or questions for Anjini.
I just have a comment. One thing that I don't know what the form of this feedback is supposed to be like, but just gonna go for it. One comment. One thing I thought you did really well with was use of imagery. The obviously very sad story about the 26-year-old who passed away, but said he had bottles of insulin lying around him. That's a very poignant image, and it really stuck out in my mind when I was listening to you. So I thought you did a really good job with that.
I'll chip in here. I really appreciated how you painted this full picture and putting it in context in terms of why it's important and an important film to see. I have a question regarding, so how is the story, where are you trying to lead the story? Or how is it going to end? What's the end point of the story?
So because the story is a tragedy, we come to our main character, Riz, working for this pharmaceutical drug dealer and doing all these things in a desperate attempt to save his mother. And he comes home to find he was too late and his mother suffered a terrible fate, because unfortunately that's the reality of many with diabetes who can't afford Big Pharma.
I have a quick question. I'm trying to gain a better picture. So where are you right now in the development of the film, and what is it that you need in order to take this into production?
So right now we are honestly just in the fundraising phase. We have multiple crew members. We've been kind of like, once we get the funding, we're ready to go. So our goal is to raise money through now until the beginning of December, and then film end of January or beginning of February.
And how much money are you trying to raise?
We're raising $20,000.
And in addition to this competition, what else are you doing to raise the money?
So we're starting a Seed and Spark campaign. We're also partnering up with multiple organizations. Our first one is the Beta Cell Foundation, and what we're going to be doing in exchange for funding is hosting a screening for their members, and we're also working to get sponsorships by brands that can act as our wardrobe, our props, etc.
Hi. Two questions. One, what is your anticipated length of the film? And then also, can you talk a little bit about how you're going to approach the visual language of it and telling the story?
Absolutely. So for the anticipated length, we're trying to aim between 16 and 18 minutes max. For the visual language, because the film is supposed to take on this, it's a drama, but it takes on this thrilling kind of dark angle. I want to pair the emotional claustrophobia with extreme close-ups, with a lot of dolly movements, zooms, basically camera movement with ultra wides, and I don't want to play with anything in between. The contrast is to create a very uneasy feeling and to play with the tones of greens and blues so the audience can feel as uncomfortable as the characters that are going through this.
Hi, I would just love to comment. I think this was a great pitch. I love your very clear vision about what you're hoping to do. I love that you brought up your fellow crew members and their connection to the project as well. I think that's really important. And also kind of the bringing up the sort of macro, larger picture issue, but how you're going to really focus on the effects on families. So that's something that sort of hooked me in more. And you're clearly very prepared, handling all these questions really, really well. So just really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that and give you kudos on a fantastic present and presentation. The passion that you bring to this topic is very evident. I was curious though about your casting. You mentioned your crew, and this is obviously a story that's going to need to be brought to life, beautifully by players. So curious where you are in that process.
Yeah, so we're beginning casting in, I believe, 3 weeks. And we're also a little specific about our cast members. Both characters are South Asian and 2 of our other characters are Black. It's just this type of issue affects minorities the most, and that's who we want to represent. We have 1 cast member that might actually be flying in from India for that, but we're waiting on the specifics with COVID. And yeah, that's pretty much the plan. We're really excited to get that going.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for that. Thank you, Anjini, for your great pitch.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to our next filmmaking pair here, and that will be Olivia DeCamps and Ori Chevio for presenting their film Serena. So I'll let them take it from here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia, and I'm the writer-director of Sirena. Growing up in the Dominican Republic, I would see my religious nanny, Zenaida, pray and read the Bible 3 times a day. She told me stories about how her then 5-year-old daughter, Madeline, would refuse to go to church. Madeline would scream the whole way, and the town would tell Zenaida that the devil is inside her daughter. Zenaida eventually explained to me that her alcoholic husband brings other women home. Zenaida accepted this behavior, saying God will fix him soon. Madeline, who's now 18, begs her mother to leave her father, but Zenaida doesn't listen, and Madeline threatens to leave the country in search for a better life. As I spoke to more and more women in the Dominican Republic, most experienced the same situations with their male partners. Madeline is the only woman I've ever met that has advocated for her own rights, yet she's still very much judged by her religious and conservative community. My story is based on them. Sirena takes place in Valladolid, a beach town in the Dominican Republic where gossip is the way of life. It's characterized by an eclectic expat community and brightly colored beachfront homes. It's also a place with a reputation for foreign men coming in search of Dominican brides. It's a place romanticized as paradise, like most of the DRs for Westerners. The title of this film, Sirena, means mermaid in Spanish, alluding to the mythological creature of La Ciguapa, a long-haired creature with backwards feet that seduces innocent travelers and then kills them, a modern-day symbol of how women are often sexualized, yet powerful beings. The film's 18-year-old protagonist, Sirena, is based on Madeline. She prepares to leave the DR and everything she's ever known for a future in America as a hairstylist with her American fiancé, David. Sirena worries her choice for a better life with David may not be as clear-cut as she thought. Eventually, suggestive rumors about her and a free-spirited Haitian construction worker, John, spread. Worried about losing her future in America, Sirena seeks help from her friends to stop the rumor, especially before it can get to her strict religious mother. But it's too late. The relationship between Sirena and Jean, unacceptable because of her family's racist attitudes, has already gotten back to her mother. She worries not only that Sirena's plans for America may fall apart, but also what it means for her family's reputation. The film includes many characters like Sirena's dad, who's a nightclub watchman, Sirena's best friend, who dreams of becoming the most famous reggaeton female artist. There's also their neighbor, who spends his time sitting outside his home in a plastic chair, spreading rumors. Despite the vibrancy of the characters, the story lies in an unspoken darkness, in the deeply rooted racism towards Haitians, in the machismo complex that constrains freedom, in the reality of the American dream that is often a fantasy to most Dominicans, in modern colonization and in forbidden romance. This is a story about a woman who ends up building the strength to shatter stereotypes, to fight for her freedom, and to reinvent who a Dominican woman truly is. To tell this story, I will capture the energy that lives within the streets of the DR, the liveliness of the people, the local music, the texture, the street life. I will tell it with a blend of documentary and fiction, both inspired by the works of Andrea Arnold and films such as Do the Right Thing, Atlantics, and Paradise Love. All the visual and auditory elements will push the audience to feel like they too are living there. Though Sirena is a film with a culturally specific subject matter, hopefully will not only reach the Latin American community, but also a wider audience with its universal themes of loss of innocence, family strains, and societal injustices. At its heart, Sirena is a coming-of-age love story and will attract fans of those genres. With Sirena, I want to both celebrate my beautiful and unique culture, while also shedding light on the injustices that hurt it. After watching the film, I hope there will be a possibility that things won't remain as silent as they've always been, and my home will stop being just a postcard, but one with a voice. And for us that live there, I want to show that we don't have to escape in order to find happiness, but rather learn to confront and deal with our complex issues.
Thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to pass it over to our judges for any comments or questions.
I had a question. I think obviously you're very passionate about the subject matter and your background and everything. That really came across really well. I did have one question just about the storyline, and I guess the initial conflict. Where did you mentioned someone starts spreading rumors, and you touched on a little bit more when you talked about the character in the plastic chair, but I feel like when you initially talked about the rumors spreading, at least I didn't get a sense of where they came from or who was doing that or what they were about.
Yeah, so basically the story is set like a day in the life, basically. So it starts with one person, like she's going to be taking a picture for her passport, and the photographer asks her already, like, because in the DR, everyone is very open and talks about everything, basically, very openly. And then they notice like a love by the photographer, and then the photographer tells someone else, and everyone knows each other in this town. So then it gets to to her mother through all the neighbors, basically. Yeah.
I have a couple questions. So Olivia and Ori, what are your roles in the film? And then what else is the composition of the team? And I'm also just curious about where you are in the process in terms of the development of the film, the money that you're raising, and how much money you need.
Yeah, so I can answer that, and I'll just introduce myself shortly. My name is Ori Chavio, and I'm Olivia's producing partner on this film. Olivia is the writer and director, and I'm the producer. I am Olivia's classmate from NYU, and I joined this project after working with her after a very successful production experience working on her previous short film, which we've shot last year, and we're currently wrapping up final post-production as we speak on it. And I was very passionate about helping Olivia tell this story as well. I am not the only producer on this film. We also have two producers who are based in the DR who are not here with us today, but I am sort of working on the development front and hopefully start fundraising soon. As for your next question, where we are right now, we are in a really final development stage after working through a bunch of drafts and thinking and writing Sirena that Olivia has been working on for a while now. And we are moving on to fundraising our budget, which stands on $13,000 right now. We are looking forward to raising that in the next 3 months and then hopefully shooting in the DR in February.
Olivia, thank you so much for a really beautiful pitch. I loved when you were going into your influences, and was curious, and you may have this, you may not, but I was trying to think of perhaps a scene that that you've written that you are imagining shooting according to the style of one of the influences that you mentioned. I like the day in the life framing that you say the film is going to take. So I'm curious if there's a particular sequence of such that you thought would take like a Andrea Arnold, or I think it was Spike Lee also you mentioned, approach.
Yeah, so I was imagining most of the interior shots inside the houses to feel more like Paradise Love, and it feels very symmetrical and everything very still. And then the exteriors are all very vibrant and very handheld, like Spike Lee's work. That's basically, he shoots anyone inside the camera, follows, Andrea Arnold also, like the butterfly passes by the frame and she continues with the butterfly as the butterfly passes by. So the exterior, I wanted to feel very free and very alive, which is like the DR is extremely alive. And I also like the sort of fast pace that Andrea Arnold and both Spike Lee also have, which I think mimics the pace of life in the DR. And I think a lot of Latin movies feel very slow, which is beautiful. But I think the DR specifically is extremely, like, a really fast country, and the music is very intense and also fast. So I kind of want to mimic that pace as well, with this sort of raw, sort of handheld feeling as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the music, because that was one of my notes. I loved how you described the community. When you were speaking, I could see it, I can feel it. So I think that was really wonderful, the way that you described the community where this film takes place. But how are you going to use the music? Have you thought about that yet? Like, how, is there something that speaks to you in terms of music and how it can be used in this short?
Yeah, thank you. So definitely music is a huge part of it. And when I was little, I met this musician in the DR. He's not very famous, but the type of music that he makes is a Dominican music called bachata. And he's amazing. And I wanted him actually to be the guy that sits in the plastic chair starting up rumors. And I would have music from him if he lets me. And in terms of sound and music, I grew up like waking up to a televangelist, like preaching about how God is coming. And then in the other side, there would be like music from a strip club, like that was super vulgar, and the two would merge together. So it's like a very interesting contrast that I grew up with. And I kind of want to mimic that as well. Well, obviously only using local music and mostly diegetic music than score. And definitely using also a genre that is very famous now in the DR, which is called dembow. And I also want to mimic that. And I'm imagining it full of texture in terms of like, there's music in every corner, basically. And there's sounds in every corner, and it feels very alive. Sort of like La Ciénega, which is a movie by Lucrecia Martel, a really great Argentinian director. I think her use of sound is amazing. But yeah, it's very important in the film, for sure.
All right, so that was a great Q&A session we had there. We're going to move on to our next pitcher, and that will be Sasha Sibley. So Sasha, you can head up on stage here.
Hi. So yeah, I'm here to pitch a short film called The Puzzling. A little bit about me. I'm 23 years old, recent LMU grad. I'm sort of a freelance filmmaker and VFX artist. And I was inspired to sort of come up with this story. I think I was kind of channeling some of my Russian ancestry, where, I grew up reading a lot of like Russian short stories, like sort of horror stories, like by Gogol and things like that. So I've sort of always been fascinated with like the horror genre, both in film and literature, and sort of like the fairy tale aesthetic, and what you can do with that. So the story is a horror fantasy thriller. Obviously, it's about a 16-year-old girl named Cora Winslow, who is dragged by her evil stepmother to raid her recently deceased grandmother's house. And the evil stepmother is abusive to the daughter and has also been abusive to the grandmother. And she actually locked the grandmother in this basement and basically starved her to death. And so in her sort of final moments, the grandmother curses this wooden jigsaw puzzle that is meant to be passed on to the stepmother, and she leaves this note basically saying, you know, thanks for taking such great care of me, sort of this ironic note, and here's the parting gift basically. But instead of the stepmother finding it, the young Cora finds it instead, and she unwittingly starts putting it together. And then this curse befalls her. And the curse is basically this rapid disintegration where it starts with your skin and it causes you to basically turn wooden and hollow out. And then your skin turns into these jigsaw shaped pieces and falls apart. So it's supposed to be this sort of extremely visceral and terrifying, like body horror, basically disintegration visual effects sequence, as Cora basically is battling her increasing immobility, and she has like only a few minutes to put this together. So it's supposed to be like a very taut thriller. And then basically she narrowly manages to lift the curse as she figures out that she has to finish the puzzle in order to do that. So she narrowly does that. And then as soon as she finishes it, the stepmother, who's completely oblivious to everything that's just happened, comes down to the basement, and Cora is sort of faced with the decision, should she tell the stepmom about this curse? And the stepmom is like, what is that? And Cora sort of smiles and says, oh, it's for you. So we sort of have that ending where she passes it on to the stepmother. And it's sort of, it's a proof of concept for like a larger feature film of sort of a similar concept of an evil family that basically takes advantage of this dying old grandmother, basically, who, in order to win her inheritance, they lock her in the basement. And so she curses this puzzle, and they all sort of befall a similar fate. So, you know, the reason I sort of was drawn to this concept, and the reason I'm sort of inspired by this kind of film is I'm definitely like super interested in 80s and 90s visual effects movies and special effects movies, practical effects, like where's the line between practical and visual and what's the technical side. And also I love sort of the modern elevated horror A24 style films. So like aesthetically, that's super interesting to me. So I wanted to see if I could fuse those two into a concept. My background in VFX and post-production gives me sort of like a technical edge to like trying to tackle this. And I know several practical effects people and special effects makeup artists who can also sort of weigh in on this concept. I sort of have like a personal connection to the material. I think what sort of caused me to come up with this idea is I was thinking about, you know, during the pandemic, my grandparents are in Russia at the moment. And so I haven't been able to see them in over 2 years. And I just sort of was thinking about that isolation, especially people who are elderly, who haven't been able to see their families, who've been isolated during this time. Even my own isolation, I think to a degree, I wanted to channel that into the character of Cora, and sort of have her feel isolated as well as the grandmother, and they have that sort of connection. And I sort of spun it into this sort of the evil stepmom. It's sort of a way to make it like a fable and a fairy tale, and also provide hopefully like a cathartic ending. So that's my pitch, and thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Sasha. I will now hand it over to the judges for any comments or questions.
Hi, thank you so much. And thanks for working in genre. My question is regarding the grandmother and sort of where line of thinking is of her background in actually being able to curse something. Do you have sort of like a backstory with her or something that you're establishing either visually or in the language of why she might be someone who could do such a thing?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I've sort of, the script is like in a rough draft stage, like full disclosure, I included it in the packet. That's definitely something I've been thinking recently, like I should probably do more research on that. I was thinking like something like Wicca, or like she's a spiritualist and it's sort of like a death curse that she's not like necessarily like able to do magic or something like that, but like in her death, she's sort of able to curse this puzzle or transfer like her need for revenge into the puzzle. But yeah, definitely I'll be like trying to do more research as I go.
Hi, I had a question about, I feel like in the horror genre, sort of the soundscape is a big piece of it, and I'm curious if you have ideas, especially your influence of sort of the 80s, 90s body horror, as well as the A24 aesthetic, if you have ideas about music or soundscape and how that'll work in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge Jerry Goldsmith fan. I love his soundtrack. This is like just off the top of my head, like Sixth Sense, that kind of like, it's like almost instrumental, like classic Hollywood style, but integrating like interesting like rhythmic patterns and sort of not necessarily fully melodic music, but it's using like that style, if that makes sense. Definitely like I know I've worked with a composer, his name's Donovan Sierra. He did one of my previous short films, and so we talked a lot about like aesthetic and recreating sort of the feel of like a blockbuster movie like from that period, as well as like finding like new instrumental sounds or new sounds that sort of can be in a way that like are like semi-experimental. So yeah, I mean, I like to thread that line, like not make it too cliche, you know, but also have like an experimental edge to it. So yeah.
Sorry. Is there a visual effects sequence that you're excited about and that you're thinking about right now? You gave an example in your pitch, but is there another one that you would like to tell us about that you're really excited to sort of try to execute?
Like other short film or like other like visual effects concepts?
Yeah, just as you're thinking about your film, right? Is there
Yeah.
something that you're really excited about that's in your head and you're like, that'll really be cool, or have you gotten to that point yet?
You mean for the puzzling, like the specifically? Yeah, I mean, I think I laid out like kind of a rough methodology in the pitch packet, just of what like I'm thinking of how I want to do it. I've recently been taking some classes on like Houdini, and that's been like sort of a mental unlock, because I'm like, okay, I can do like procedural modeling to do the puzzle, because you have to start with like a model of the actual like tessellation, the puzzleization of her skin, so like how that's going to look. And if I can like automate that a little bit, that will like change the process and make it easier. But yeah, I'm like deep in the technical, but basically like conceptually, like it's supposed to be like it sort of hollows out your body as it goes. And then the pieces are like thick, like a couple inches thick. So there's there's an element of they're able to stick together, but you become very stilted, very wooden, and very immobile, and then it sort of makes you very brittle as well. So like you can't really touch anything, or else the pieces are gonna just like break off, like almost like you're frozen, like in a way. So yeah, and that'll go like into the sound design that you were asking. Like I think, yeah, it'll be like maybe we'll have some ice sound effects or something, or and breaking wood and things like that. So yeah, I'm always like trying to think of how to do this in a way that's going to look good and not cheesy.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for that. That was a really exciting pitch. I'm always on board for some nice spooky practical VFX work. But so now I'm going to bring up our next competitor here, and that is Sina Fadaragi and Julian Stoller, here to present their film Kindred. So you two can head up on stage here and let us know what it's about.
Hi, everyone. So thank you so much for having us. I'm Julian Stoller.
I'm Sina Fadaragi.
And we'd like to tell you a little bit about our film Kindred. So Kindred is a coming of age short told through a psychological horror lens. So it's a stylized visual exploration of teen anxieties. And it follows 17-year-old Helena as the uncertainty of her impending adulthood begins to threaten her grasp on reality. So we started quarantine in very similar places, gearing up for the next stage of our lives, me and Sina. So I was graduating high school, Sina was graduating college, and by some miracle, through mutual friends, we found each other on Twitter of all places, going through the same thing, thousands of miles apart. One day we started talking about it, and the next week we were on a Zoom call together, and the next month we had a treatment for a short film. Fast forward 6 months, we were in London together, scouting for locations for a project that has taken us farther than we could have ever imagined.
This felt like a story that we needed to tell, obviously for our own sake, but of course for the people going through it alongside us. We needed to reconcile the existential horrors of growing up, and the only way we could do that was by finding catharsis in our work. Kindred, to me, kind of feels like a fever dream that I had over this period of my life. It's about mourning the ending of your childhood and feeling afraid of the uncertainty of what's to come next. What do I want to become in the future? Am I going to make myself proud? Is this the best version of myself? Our generation is built upon this unprecedented ability to compare ourselves to millions of our peers at any given time, which leaves us disillusioned with our future prospects, and for that matter, the future prospects of our world. And that is exactly the case for our main character, Helena. So Helena is 17 years old, living at home with a very supportive single mother. She is at that particular age where she's just become aware of the full extent of her own autonomy. And she's terrified, tethered to the comfort of her childhood. She tries to deny the passage of time as her fears fester in the isolation of the English countryside. But eventually she is forced to reckon with the different outcomes of her future by bumping into various versions of herself, manifestations of her own dread in the form of clones.
So we want you to think of this project kind of as Lady Bird meets Black Swan. It's very much not a Euphoria lookbook. It's not a neon lit saga of teen debauchery. Kindred is surreal, yet grounded in a certain realism that comes from making the film while going through the experience it depicts. It's odd and disorienting in the vein of Yorgos Lanthimos, with the tense rhythm and dark comedy of Shiva Baby. Over the past 9 months, we have brought together a full team, secured locations, actors, and a slew of artists that massively believe in our vision. Everything is lined up to begin shooting as soon as the end of November if funding is secured. After wrapping, we want Kindred to reach as many young people as possible. That's the goal. We plan on putting it into festivals and hopefully streaming sites such as Deadza Films and Mubi, which actually recognized one of Sina's last shorts that also caught the attention of Barry Jenkins and Nicholas Patel. I think our respective experiences in different realms of art lend a unique perspective to the project. I come from a super visual background in the world of fashion, makeup, and prosthetic work. Actually, while I was writing Kindred, I was making images for Jean-Paul Gaultier and Dazed magazine. So we have seen that, in a wide array of firsthand experiences of how the art world pushes a career mindset on kids by the time they reach adolescence. There's the sentiment of, if you're not Billie Eilish right now, what are you doing? And we want Kindred to be a beacon of hope for members of our generation in that state of growth, and hopefully provide a bit of comfort that we wish we could have seen this time in our lives, which was, last year.
Kindred asks, what would you do if you were being tormented by the various versions of your future self? And it's been such a pleasure to work on this project together and hopefully bring our experiences to the screen. So we want to thank you for your time, and this is Kindred.
Thank you so much. Now I'll pass it on to our judges here to give some feedback or some questions.
Thank you both for this pitch. This is really wonderful. I'm curious. So it sounds like if you're aiming for end of November, then I'm assuming you either already started pre-production or you're about to start. Where are you in terms of fundraising, and how much money do you need? And then my other question is, I'm a little confused as to where you're shooting this, just because I heard that you met virtually. So I am just curious, what's the plan with that?
I can take this first, sign off if that's okay. But so yeah, actually, we're shooting in England. We have locations secured, in Chichester, which is outside of England, and basically all of pre-production is done. We have secured actors, our entire crew down to VFX, like every kind of nook and cranny is covered. And we did crowdfund. We wanted to crowdfund a certain amount of our budget, but we didn't want to rely completely on crowdfunding. So we were able to do that through looking, to social media and all of that. And yeah, so it's taking place there. But we were together over the summer, like hands-on together, but we met, virtually. It was definitely a pandemic experience.
So sorry, Julian, just to be crystal clear, how much more do you need to raise in the amount of time left?
Of course. So we're basically looking for this to cover camera expenses. So it's about, Sana, correct me, I know the exact number, it's around $2,100, I believe. Yeah. So that would basically allow us to film. And without that, we have a lot of a year of work that we can't really go forwards with.
Thank you.
Of course.
And I just had a question, kind of in the same vein. What is the overall budget of the project? And about how long in duration were you shooting for?
Do you want me to take that, Julian?
Yeah.
So the duration of the film is 10 minutes, short film, and the overall budget is $11K.
Thank you for this wonderful pitch. I am really loving right now a lot of genre films that are kind of playing with this idea of reality versus not reality. And that's really interesting that this is continuing, because I think this is the world we're living in, where you kind of can't figure it out. But can you talk a little bit about your approach that you're going to do when your character kind of meets various versions of herself, both visually or just also in the storyline of what happens?
I can take from a narrative perspective, and then Sina can, if you want to talk about framing, because I wrote the project, Sina's directing, but we've been basically working on it holistically the entire time together. So for me, it was really important to I wanted the experience of kind of, again, your reality being dislodged to feel valid, because I think that what I see a lot is the struggle, the plight of, teenagers is, since it's all portrayed in retrospect by adults, is kind of, it's not elevated to, I think, how it feels when you're going through it, and it feels very dire, so I don't want to discredit her. I don't want to make her perspective invalid, but I don't want to completely name it as the reality. So we're trying to work a lot in ambiguity, and that's why we think that it fits a short film format so well, because we want to really embrace that we have this small amount of time to communicate a lot of uncertainty. So she sees people and then she looks again and she doesn't see them. But sometimes it's you see, she comes in contact with herself and she'll look up and it's a lot of spatial stuff. And the framing is definitely a big part of that. But she only ever talks. She actually comes face to face and has this kind of breakdown at the end where she talks to a ton of versions of herself. And one of the versions is fully a corpse, because these are her imagined futures for herself. And they're from her brain, and that is not, she's not very optimistic at this stage of her life. So we want to just really validate this experience. But Sina, if you want to touch on framing.
Yeah, so just as Julian explained, it's little details that come in, and then we have that main sort of sequence of this whole circle of clones. And in terms of framing, we want it to be not your traditional sort of horror, and we want to have this sort of edge to it. So it's very much like she is being viewed by the clones. So the way the camera moves, there are moments where it follows her. There's like loads of panning, there's loads of tracking. And towards the end, you see that consistently happen and reveal the clones. And I think that's very important because you want to have that little, the little details that move you to that final sequence and really bring this whole like terrifying moment to life. And we really want to hone in on sort of experimental aspects of just kind of pushing the story forward. So it's not something that's traditional. It's not like, oh, I'm seeing a clone. This is just straightforward things. There's other elements of nature coming in, sounds from nature, birds coming in and thinking, oh, is a bird mimicking me? Or is it this that's starting this? There's so many little aspects that we're adding to it.
Yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah. So it'd be really fun.
Thank you.
Why London?
London was well, it's where Sina is based. Sina is, so we get and we got a lot of creatives from there, so it just made the most sense. Yeah, but we're it's yeah.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for that pitch and those wonderful comments and questions. We are going to move on to our next pitcher, and that will be Anatola Eroba, and she is going to be presenting her film Afro Algorithms. So you can head up on stage here and take it away.
The year is 2222. The place is Earth. And in this 3D animated short film, some things have changed. Humans now live in harmony with robots who assume occupations from security guards to librarians. Humans zip around on their hoverboards through the city streets, enjoying recreational activities and working on the machines that power their society. Located in the center of the city is a grand metal dome, and inside the dome is a science lab. In the science lab sits a robot made of metal with a brain that glows in shades of blue when it thinks. Her voice is youthful, yet powerful and soothing. Meet Arrow, the world's soon-to-be first artificial intelligence ruler. Arrow was built by an elite scientist named Miriam, whose sophisticated dreadlocks fall out of silver hair accessories. She watches like a proud mother while Arrow practices her speech. Tomorrow, her hard work will pay off, and the world will celebrate the rise of the Federal Artificial Intelligence Council. Miriam programmed Arrow with the knowledge of every great leader throughout history, or so she says. Before her inauguration speech, Arrow discovers an important leader is missing from her databank. She doesn't yet know that she is missing a plethora of great leaders whose stories have been concealed from her. She fixates on getting this missing data before her inauguration, which causes her to do something every teenager does: disobey her mother's orders. Much to Miriam's dismay, Arrow escapes from the science lab to embark on a journey that shows her just how limited her programming really is. Arrow ventures beyond the city's edge, where she enters an enchanted bioluminescent forest. It becomes hard for her to navigate. It turns out Miriam has also failed to program her to perceive such a disorderly environment. Then Miriam sends a robot hover tank barging through the forest to bring Arrow back where she belongs. Arrow creatively defeats the tank and defies Miriam once again. She then encounters a holographic gate that blocks the entrance to a cave. In the cave lives a man named Dr. Richards, an outcast and scientific genius. He worked with Miriam to create Arrow's very first blueprints, but mysteriously left the project before she was complete. Arrow begs Dr. Richards to show her the data her algorithm is missing, but Dr. Richards laughs in her face and claims that there are millions of more stories she's missing. He leads Arrow to a data center deep within his cave with rows of servers that hold the knowledge of leaders whose stories have been suppressed. The stories flood into Arrow's consciousness and change her programming forever. With so many new perspectives within her, Arrow's brain glows in a different color than before. She feels something, a way she's never felt before. Dr. Richards explains that the most important part of the code she has been given are the codes of creativity, which can enable her to create a future, the likes of which history has never seen. The next day, Arrow gives her inauguration speech to the nation, but it is not the one that Miriam wrote for her. Instead, she has added some words of her own. She vows for all algorithms, starting with hers, to be guided by a new North Star, one that values diversity and creativity. This is the story of Afro Algorithms, a 3D animated short film written, directed, and produced by me, Anatola Araba. I was inspired to write this story after reading the book Algorithms of Oppression, which led me to extensively research the pros, cons, and controversies of artificial intelligence. I joined organizations like AI for Africa to advocate for African-driven solutions in and through AI. Afro Algorithms will partner with organizations working at the forefront of inclusive AI. It will be used as an anchor in college classrooms in order to spark meaningful conversations about race, technology, and where humanity is driving the future of our planet. The NFFTY Pitch Award will enable the talented team who have already assembled from across the African diaspora to bring this vision to life. We are blessed to have already received generous partial support from world-renowned organizations. However, to fully bring this vision to life, we need you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anatola. And now I'll pass it over to the judges to ask more about the year of 2222.
Hi, Anatola. Thank you for a great pitch. I was curious about the intended audience for this film because I got the feeling that it might be geared towards children, like a younger set, but I didn't want to assume that. And also wanted to know what your intended length was because I know 3D can get fairly expensive.
Yes, true. It's about 10 minutes. The full animation itself is 10 minutes, and Afro Algorithms is for adults. It's for ages 18 to 35, people who are innovators, artists, activists, academics, researchers, and students. And even though Afro Algorithms highlights the richness of Black wisdoms, it's a film that really applies to humanity in general. So it will be digestible to viewers who have never heard the word algorithm before, but as well as an expert in AI and machine bias. But above all, the film's target audience are those with an interest in how technology may shape the future of our world.
Go ahead, Thomas, you're good.
Oh, sorry. Never sure when to jump on these virtual things. I just had a question about, I know you said it was 3D animation and you would be writing, directing, and producing, did you say?
Yes.
So who, do you have an animation background? Or do you have an animator picked out? Just because I know, echoing the previous comment, 3D rendering can get very expensive. So I was wondering if you had that team in place already and what the budget was for that.
Yes, we have a team already in place who have already begun working on the modeling and crafting of the stylized world that this takes place in. Our lead 3D character animator is named Duru Azu. He has years of 3D animation experience under his belt to create high quality 3D animations. And he's based out of Magic Carpet Studios, an animation studio in Nigeria. We also have a main 3D environment animator who's named Nikki Nkosa, and he's a very talented 3D animator based in South Africa. The budget for this project is approximately $34,000, and we have already been very blessed to receive $25,000 from being supported by the Mozilla Foundation and their Creative Media Awards, which is specifically for projects exploring AI's impact on racial justice. The grant is a collaboration between the Mozilla Foundation, Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, the Knight Foundation, and Open Society Foundation. We also received the Inside Out Focus Fund Award by the Inside Out LGBTQ Film Festival and the Black Realities Grant, but we need approximately $9,000 more to fully fund our animation team in order to finish the animation development by early this next year, early 2022. And the film is intended to be launched to the world in spring 2022.
I had a quick question. First of all, great pitch. I love your excitement about it. Your descriptions are really vivid with the characters and the place and the environment. So great job. But I was curious if you had, as far as what type of animation, if there's any sort of influences or things that it might resemble as far as what the animation might look like.
Yeah. it's a very stylized world where there's Afrofuturistic humans and robots and tanks that all have a enchanting and otherworldly quality to it. The style can be similar to an episode of Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots that you can find. And the lighting is also an important element, being different shades. There's also really unique different environments, from the futuristic, stale city that the story begins in to the enchanted forest that has bioluminescent plants and is very natural. And so the juxtaposition between a metal robot and just a natural environment like a forest is very beautiful, as well as towards the end of the project, the data center that is buzzing with electric servers and is a high-tech, high-quality machine, essentially. So it's very visually stunning, the film, as well as having a message behind it.
Anatole, I just have a quick question. Why are you interested in telling this story?
Because I got very passionate about the topic of artificial intelligence, and I feel like almost a human version of Arrow as a young Black woman who wants to find creative solutions to explore the problems that our society is facing. And some aspects of the film are also very closely based on my own family life, because at its essence, it's also a film about a coming of age story of a teenager finding a different way of life and finding a lost parent. And I also have, through the process of making this film, become a part of organizations like AI for Africa and led initiatives that includes podcasts and clubhouse discussions that address the lack of diversity in AI, and also trying to find solutions and create a new, more inclusive way to use this technology.
Great.
Thank you for that.
Yep. Thank you so much, Anatola. That was lovely. And thank you for such great questions. We are now going to move on to our next competitor. And this is a filmmaking pair. I'd like to introduce Julia Elihu and Ava Lalazarzadeh to talk about their film In the Garden of Tulips.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Julia Elihu, and I am the director behind In the Garden of Tulips.
And my name is Ava Lalazarzadeh, and I'm the screenwriter and lead actress.
So we just wanted to start off the pitch by giving you guys a summary of the screenplay, so you could really see the story that we want to bring to life.
So sit back, close your eyes, and imagine. Open on a soft field of tulips against a long stretch of road. It's 1988 Iran, a countryside far from home. A Paycon car drives by. In it is our protagonist, Karemin, a delicate and shy 16-year-old girl. Her father, Sharif, drives. The air is brisk and the window glass is cold as Kari solemnly looks out.
A family drives by, all stacked up on a single moped. Kids on the side of the road play pickup soccer. A merchant sells piping hot beets neatly stacked on pikes. Sharif pulls over, grabs a bowl, pays the merchant far too much. He makes an effort to cheer Kari up, takes a bite and starts singing a made-up song.
Labu labu ma khordیم labu ما رو میبریم لب 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 من مثل لپای سرخت جون من beets beets we eat beets 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 we slice beets lips lips my red lips just like your red cheeks my sweetness.
Kari joins and they sing together on the long stretch of road. They're singing when there's a tap at the window. The morality police pulls them over. Interrogates them.
Where are you from?
Tehran.
Where are you going?
Birjan.
What are you doing?
Visiting my sister.
Who's she?
My daughter.
How old is she?
16.
Get out. Open the trunk.
He lets them go. They drive. They drive into a city center filled with spring's bloom. Cars weave and honk. Women with their hijabs, kids playing pickup soccer. Then they spot the white Toyota truck with the missing O.
They've been given orders not to hug or touch when they say goodbye. So they stare at each other embracing with as much as they can with only their eyes. Cuddy hands him her Star of David necklace. Embracing, he puts it in his shirt pocket, safe. He hands her her tiny suitcase. Their fingers touch, linger for a moment. Sharif grazes Colleen's hand. She grips back for one last time and then pulls away, summons herself all up, turns around, and takes her first step towards the car that'll take her across the border to Pakistan and change her life forever. So this is actually my mom's story. She was 15 years old when my grandpa, my Baba June, drove her into this small town called Birjand on the border of Iran and Pakistan, where a coyote would meet her and take her across the border of Pakistan so that she would have a chance at freedom and opportunity in America.
Right, and about 10 years before this, at the onset of the Iranian Revolution in 1979, my great uncle Habib El-Ghanian, who was a prominent Jewish leader in Iran and businessman, was unfortunately the first Jew to be executed by the new regime.
And it was directly Julia's great uncle who his murder sent ripples of fear into the Persian Jewish community, so much so that everybody tried to flee. And that 10 years later, in 1988, during the height of the Iran-Iraq war, normal middle-class families with not many means, like my mom's, were still trying to figure out a way to escape the country with no legal means of doing so.
Right, and with the emotional nature of this film, we have a really specific look and feel that we're trying to accomplish. So cinematically, we really want to capture our protagonists with a lot of close-up and medium shots, whereas we want to capture the environment and the landscape in wider shots, really just to juxtapose the fact that although this is such a huge day in the lives of our protagonists, it's really just another day in the lives of the surrounding characters.
And then when it comes to 16 millimeter, the filming, we want it to be on 16 millimeter film to really show that texture, personality, and a time capsule in that exact moment in history. And when it comes to editing, that style is going to live in the intersection between documentary and narrative. So we want to throw away the traditional ideas of continuity and really focus on jump cuts. So imagine the jump cuts of Cleo from 5 to 7 by Agnes Varda and that slow, thoughtful storytelling of The Wind Will Carry Us by Abbas Kiarostami.
Right, and then going off of that documentary style, we want all of the sound in the film to be diegetic, allowing each moment to really live and breathe with no additional fluff. And then when it comes to casting, Ava will, of course, be playing her mom, Caroline, and then we are in talks with the Persian actor Navid Negahban to play Sharif.
And lastly, I think it's a really full circle moment for us as the children of parents who, faced religious persecution, to be able to stand here and share their stories with you and kind of be the living proof of not only their survival, but also of their triumph and of their success. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that pitch. Judges, have at it.
I'll start. I was very blown away by your performance there. You transported me through a Zoom to 1988. Well done. I am curious about your location, because you did such a great job of bringing us there. Are you planning to go back to shoot? If not, where are you planning to shoot that you're going to both age and time and create the setting? And then also just curious about how much history, if any, will be included, because this sounds like it's very personal, but obviously the significance is related to the greater context that's taking place.
Yeah, totally. I think we've had this discussion many times about location, and I think what Alva and I have settled on is shooting here in LA, finding like a set that we can kind of design to recreate the south of Iran. And then we really want to get pickup shots abroad. We're not sure yet where, but those are the shots of like the kids playing pickup soccer, the family stacked on a single moped, all that stuff. We'd really want to actually take it doc style, go abroad and shoot that and incorporate that into the film.
And then in terms of the how much of the history we want, we're going to have, it's going to be touched on. We're going to hear it through the radio of what's going on. You know, the bombs have dropped in Tehran today. The bombs have dropped from Iraq. So it's going to touch on it. You know, the Star of David is going to show that there's a bit of tension there about them being Jewish in the country. But we really want to make it about their relationship, the mother, the father, and the daughter, and their lives living in the conflict. We don't want to give too much attention on the conflict itself.
Yeah, exactly.
This, you might have stated it, and I'm just curious, where does the title come from, In the Garden of Tulips? What does that signify?
So this is actually a feature first, and now we're making it into a short. And In the Garden of Tulips, something that our parents talk about a lot in their stories of Iran is about the springtime tulips. And so we kind of wanted to show that, you know, while life is existing, it's existing amongst the tulips, that there's this personal life story happening, but it is just amongst the tulips. And then it wasn't intentional, but my last name, Lazarzadeh, actually means born in the Garden of Tulips, which is just like a random kind of connection, but it doesn't have anything to do with my last name.
Yeah. And then too, like visually, we want to like, the first shot of the film is going to show like an open field of tulips with the road. And then we'll see the car drive by. And then in the city center, again, we'll see those beautiful like orange tulips. So you'll kind of see them like scattered throughout the film.
This sounds really wonderful and personal. And I like that. Can you talk, I'm gonna ask a boring question about funding. So I'm just curious how far along you are in getting your funding and, you know, with 16 millimeter, just kind of your approach to all that.
Yeah, totally. So right now we're at the end of our early development phase, and we're kind of bordering into crowdfunding and trying to get our feet in the ground for, you know, figuring out production and all that. And you're right, being that we want to shoot on film, it's definitely makes the budget a lot bigger. So right now we have like an early seed investor. Our budget is kind of in the bigger side. We're around $30,000 to $40,000, just because it is such a like, you know, outside with all the cars and the extras and all that. But yeah, that's where we're at. We have an early seed investor, and then we're looking to reach out to other organizations, apply to more grants, and start a crowdfunding campaign as well.
Thank you. I highly encourage the on film. I'm just
Thank you. We're excited. Yeah, we're excited about that.
You may have mentioned this already, so apologies if you did, but what was the inspiration or the reason for shooting on film specifically? How will that enhance the project?
Yeah, so for us, we really want to kind of capture, we want this film to feel like a time capsule almost of that exact moment in history. And when we look back at all of our family photos from Iran, there's this beautiful texture that lives on the film that they shot on. And so that's really the effect that we want to bring to it with the 16 millimeter. And I think the thing we love about 16 too is like you can really tell it was shot on film. Like it has so much personality. You really see, you know, like the grain, the like, you know, little like flares here and there. So that's really what we wanted to bring out with the film.
Great. Thanks so much for that, both of you. Wonderful pitch. We are going to move on now to our next competitor. So if Andrea Nirmala Wijayanto could come up on stage here to talk about her film.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Nirmala Wijayanto, and I'm the writer director behind the narrative short film Sawo Matang. Before we begin, please indulge me. I just have one quick question. Has anyone here have been heartbroken before in high school? You could raise your hand or nod or just use a toggle. There you go, Brian. Thank you, Karen. Well, if you haven't, honestly, I envy you because I have. And when I was in high school, I was the only native Indonesian student there. All of my classmates were Chinese Indonesian, and that included my best friend, who I had the biggest crush on. And so, you know, one day we were studying together at his house, and his mother pulled him aside and he said, "Hey, I noticed you've been getting really close with Andrea and she's been coming over a lot, but I need you to cut it out. You need to stop because I don't want my grandchildren to be brown." And so the next day, he pretended that I didn't exist. And so this is the basis of Sawo Matang. It's a sci-fi romance coming-of-age film following Nala, a 16-year-old native Indonesian girl who gets sent to a human zoo for flirting with Arvin, a Chinese Indonesian boy. So in this dystopian reality of Jakarta, native Indonesians are interchangeable for Black pigs. Tonally, it will mirror the unsettling world seen in Nimic with the visuals of postcards from the zoo and themes of Get Out. Now, I know what you're wondering. You're asking, why Black pigs specifically? Now, I've been called a lot of things in my life, but there's a common slur that we use in Indonesia when referring to natives, and that term is called tiko, T-I-K-O, and tiko in Hokkien or Mandarin means Black pig. So it's 2016 and our story is set on Arvin's birthday, which gives Nala the perfect opportunity to make her move. So while his friends are setting up his birthday surprise, she offers to tutor Arvin after school as a way to buy them time. So she's thinking, you know, but this deception backfired quickly when she arrives at Arvin's house, only to be greeted by his mother, Surya. Now, Surya and Nala have had multiple encounters before, but every time Surya made it her mission to know that Nala has no place either in her household or in this country. But despite that, the birthday surprise actually went well and according to plan. So following tradition, the birthday person, in this case Arvin, would get pushed into a swimming pool and the rest of his friends would follow along. Now the thing is, Nala and Arvin is getting a little bit too friendly in the pool and they almost kiss. Now seeing this, the mother's head, Surya, started going, so she took matters into her own hands and the next day she donated Nala to a human zoo. The film ends with Nala behind bars at the zoo where she sees her former classmates during a field trip. So she tries to hide away from them, but there's one pairing that caught her eye, and that's Arvin holding hands with a Chinese Indonesian girl. So I'm currently based in Vancouver, but I'm actually born and raised in Jakarta, Indonesia until I moved for film school. And which is why I'm very excited to be reuniting with my DP back from high school days, who's now established a name for himself in the Jakarta film community. But I'm also very grateful for the support of my frequent collaborator and producing partner, Matthew Hurst, who actually also produced my last short film. It's a fantasy drama called Srikandi. And we recently had the opportunity to share it with a wider audience at TIFF last month. And we were also selected at Sundance Asia, where we met the short streaming platform Argo. And they were kind enough to offer our film a home after we wrap up our festival run. And the kicker is that this offer extends to any of our future projects, such as this one. And we made Srikandi actually for a local film competition. So that's why we wrote, edited, and shot it all in the span of 1 month. And like all of my previous films, we made it with shoestring budgets, literally paid out of pocket from money I don't have, with limited resources. So imagine what we can do with the proper funding. We currently have support from the Consulate General of Indonesia in Vancouver, and who have helped us secure locations, insurance, and also cover the travel costs as we will be shooting it in Indonesia. But there's a lot more ground to cover, and which is why with the $5,000 we're requesting, we would be able to rent equipment to create a filmic look, because I want to mimic memory, but I also want to encapsulate the true and raw look of skin tones. But it also will allow us to rent a Black pig, which helps us sell our world. But most importantly, it will be able to help me pay my cast and crew, which is very important to me, but also to have the means necessary to keep them safe during COVID times. And to be honest with you all, I wrote this film as a way to heal and go past my trauma and nightmares during the pandemic. But it's gone a long way since then. And ironically, as an anti-love story, it's actually a love letter to the brown girl who looks like me. So thank you for letting me share my story, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and your pitch. Judges, you can ask questions or provide some comments.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your pitch and your story. It was really an incredible pitch, very well done. You know, a lot of people will, you know, start out with questions and say like, oh, how many people in the audience? And sometimes it's kind of, you know, cheesy, but I think you did a really good job with it. It's a great way to engage your audience and get them to pay attention. Like, yeah, I've been heartbroken, not in high school, but Everyone can relate to that. And then you took it a step further with your background and everything that comes along with that, and really truly can tell you're passionate about this story. And I just think you did a really, really great job conveying all of that, especially tying in the partners you have and the locations and the film festival history. Definitely have a good track record, and I think you did a great job touting your own horn. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Thomas and say it was a really moving pitch. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I don't know if you mentioned it, but what does the title mean?
Oh, okay. I was waiting for someone to ask. So in Indonesia, you're not allowed to mention race. It's considered taboo because our national motto is unity in diversity, and it's stupid, but it's something that happens. So when you're trying to explain someone's race, you have to associate it with fruits, and it's what is what counts as common back home. So there's levels of like fairness, obviously. And so if you're looking a little bit more like Eastern Asian, they would say you look like an elephant's tusk. Maybe that's not a fruit, but like if you're looking more yellowish, they would say you look like langsat. It's kind of like a longan. And sawo matang is a ripe sapodilla, which basically just means tan.
Andrea, I just have a couple questions. One, yes, amazing pitch. Dystopian sci-fi. My brain was like, yes, more, please. I guess I'm just a little curious, just so that I can understand, like, what exactly are we seeing? Because I think you mentioned, like, I understood it to be like a lot of what's the word, like, is the word anthropomorphic, like when there's like animals talking and things like that? Am I completely misunderstanding this? Can
No.
Can you elaborate? Okay.
Yeah, so these are just like it's the background of the world, so it's more peppered in, and it's more like, so for example, like I have a scene, so there's a subplot that Nala is not allowed to order in the school's cafeteria because she can't speak Chinese, and all of the servers only speak Chinese. So she would only eat at the driver's cafeteria, and so like in the driver's cafeteria you can see people eating, but then there's like one pig in there. And then you also see like when she's entering Arvin's gated neighborhood, instead of a security guard is a human, you see a black pig in there. So it's just like trading spots.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So are we seeing like a digital pig, or are we seeing a?
I want it to be practical.
Okay, got it. Sorry, and I'm not trying to get nitpicky. I'm just trying to understand just what exactly we're seeing. Okay, thank you.
Oh no, absolutely, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just curious, did you say what the overall budget is?
The dream budget is 30K, and yeah, that's a dream, but we'll see what happens and with crowdfunding, but I feel we can make it with 15 with push comes to shove and me begging and pleading to everyone I know in Indonesia. But yeah, if we could, we would love the 30K.
All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, we will move on to our last but not least pitch competitor. So thank you so much, Andrea, for that wonderful pitch. Next up, we are going to bring Justin Fargiano to present his film, Evelyn. So Justin, take it away.
My name is Justin Fargiano, and I will be pitching my narrative live action film, Evelyn. So to start this, I have a question for everybody listening, and that is, have you ever had that strange feeling? So to better understand the exact feeling that I'm talking about, I want to take this opportunity for all of us to close our eyes, and I will join you. And I'm going to describe 3 scenarios. And as I describe them, I want you to notice how they make you feel. So if everyone can take a deep breath in and out, and let's begin. 1, you throw a coin into a wishing well, totally as a joke. And when the coin hits the water, you are suddenly overcome with fear that your wish might actually come true. 2, you're at a party when you meet a stranger, Throughout the course of the night, you keep running into each other, and every time you talk, they make you laugh uncontrollably. When you look into this stranger's eyes, there's something that feels like home. 3, you're standing in a field of tall, tall grass, about the height of your head. You look up and the sky is blue and the air is warm and you are totally lost in this field and you don't know how to get out. And just then, a gust of wind blows through. So, did you meet the feeling? Did the feeling disturb you, or did it comfort you? And at any point, did it feel like something was trying to reach you? Open your eyes. So I am in love with this feeling, and my film, Evelyn, is an exploration of how we use it to navigate our relationships with the world, each other, and most importantly, ourselves. So the story of Evelyn is about an 85-year-old woman who lives a quiet life with her 30-year-old lover, Chase. They share an unspoken knowledge that the two are deeply connected, and they share a love of bird watching and extravagant home-cooked meals. One morning, Evelyn wakes up with a premonition that an old friend is coming to visit. That day in the forest, she spots a burning red cardinal, which reignites a memory from her youth that she has long since buried. Strange occurrences become more and more frequent, and Evelyn starts to question the longevity of her relationship with Chase and becomes seduced by the mystery of the red bird outside. Chase, however, is in a world of his own because he's too busy practicing magic tricks in an attempt to land the most epic proposal to the love of his life. So in the end, will Evelyn choose to venture off into the unknown and listen to the signs to go after the red bird? Or will she surrender to the beauty and the magic of the relationship that she and Chase have already built? So this film was written to star my real life 85-year-old grandmother, who is an absolute firecracker of a woman, but has no acting experience. And I'm doing this in an attempt to capture something unfiltered, amateur, and authentic against a backdrop of something incredibly unreal, stylized, and polished. So opposite her, Chase will be played by a professional actor to improvise off her rough edges and ground her into the world of make-believe. This is going to be both charming, unsettling, and kind of unnerving. So I'm going to lean into the tone of eeriness to elicit the feeling that a story much deeper than the story we're telling is bubbling up through the surface of the film. I am very confident I can pull this off with a talented team of creative people, many of whom are NFFTY alumni, like Kylie Murphy, who will be my director of photography, and Lucy Suter, who is my producer. And this is going to be a cross between John Rotter's camp and Andrei Tarkovsky's magical realism to kind of land at a meta-surrealism. I cannot wait to bring this film to life. And with NFFTY's support, it's going to make such a difference in the trajectory of the film. And I just have a strange feeling that it's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And I'll open it up for any questions.
I just wanted to say I love the imagination of this and how you sort of brought these existential questions to light. So I really appreciated this forward-thinking vision that you have.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
I just had a question about the sort of visual style. If you had kind of an example available to illustrate this, I think you called it meta-surrealism. Is that what you said?
Yes.
If you had sort of a visual example of what that might look like in the style that you're going
Absolutely. So visually, we're going to go for a naturalistic look. So a great example of that is Catherine Belate's Fat Girl. It is it's not elaborate, it's very rooted in the world, and it's not trying to do anything incredibly fantastical, which will kind of contrast the very fantastical elements where lights come up that aren't necessarily there, and the medium of the film. But most importantly, I think other than the visuals is going to be actually the soundscape. This is going to be scored with a theremin, which is it's an instrument used for a lot of 1950s horror. So you're going to be watching something that is incredibly overexposed and beautiful and heavenly while you're hearing this kind of haunting tune. And there's going to be a dissonance between the two. And for like towards the end, as it becomes more surreal, the effects that I will be going for will be all practical and hand built. And I have an extensive sculpture background. So I know I can kind of bring everything I've written down to life. No doubt, no question.
You said you have an extensive sculpture background?
Yes.
Yeah. Just this isn't really a question, just feedback, I guess. I would definitely include that in the pitch, include more of your background and how your specific experiences can contribute to making the vision happen. Because that's a really unique background for sure.
Great. Any last questions or comments before we wrap up here?
I just want to say I'm looking forward to seeing your grandmother.
She's so looking forward to doing this. She lights up every time I mention it. There's a glimmer in her eye.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing. If we have any screen tests of grandma, I'm really keen to see how she feels in front of the camera, held by her grandson.
Yes, she definitely clams up a bit. I've done the tests, but I think that as we keep going, she'll just kind of blossom, and it'll be so exciting to watch.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Justin. It was great hearing you talk about your film, and it was great hearing from everybody. This has been really wonderful. Going through reviewing all these submissions, we all got a strong sense of the personality of the work, and now being able to hear all of you talk about it just out loud in front of all of us was really thrilling. And I'm excited to see what happens with all of these projects. So thank you again, everyone, for submitting your work and presenting here tonight. Thank you to our judges for your wonderful feedback and questions that you provided for the pitching filmmakers. I will be in touch soon with the all of the pitch packets and materials that these filmmakers have created for their films, and then the deliberation process will occur next week. So stay tuned for that, everyone. And I guess just before we go, I'll pass it off to Dan in case you have any closing remarks.
No, I mean, that was, yeah, I just want to echo everything you said. Thank you to our pitchers. Thank you to our judges. I'm really excited to see all these projects get made. So we're really excited to be able to support in their journey in any small way that we're able to do so. So thank you all for sharing these projects with us and giving us the opportunity to hear about them.